Hello and welcome to episode 73. 4.
74.
Blimey.
Yes,
God.
Know,
chewing through these episodes.
More episodes than England have runs, don't we? The sad thing is that was actually true in the third test. But anyway, there we are.
Yes, with another Wrong End of the Stick podcast with quite I don't know about a controversial topic to kind of talk about today. I don't know how you would describe it, but
it could be controversial in some ways. I think basically we are going to save English cricket with this podcast. This episode in particular, I think, is going to save English cricket. So, that's a controversial statement in itself, isn't it? Really,
they are quite controversial.
It's an ambitious statement, anyway. I'll give it that. Yeah. But yeah, I think cricket, the world of cricket, certainly English cricket anywhere, has been full of talk of how do you fix English cricket, which I think the Ashes performances have fairly comprehensively demonstrated it is broken. But also not just the Ashes. This is not just a one-off issue. This has been the worst. 2021 was the worst year for English Test cricket ever.
Wow.
So there are clearly massive problems, and there's stuff that there's lots of people talking, and there's lots of buzz around how do you fix it, what do you do going forward, and various pundits have put stuff forward, and there was a lot of talk circling around whether Joe Root should be replaced as captain. We talked about that.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's talk. It's not been officially confirmed, but seems pretty much nailed on that the coach, Chris Silverwood, is going to be sacked as soon as this series is finished. There's people effectively interviewing for his job already, so that seems like it's going to happen. But there's also a lot of talk around the bigger, wider problems, and I think it's one of those that we want to focus on. But, a lot of the talk has been around county cricket and the fact that there's not enough county cricket being played, and that's therefore, England players are not getting enough practice, and it's not the right time of year, and all kinds of bits and pieces there. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess, to be honest, isn't it? I mean, if we look at the performances that have led us to this, England have lost 3 straight tests in Australia extremely comprehensively.
Yep.
Stuart Broad was quoted as saying the other day that it doesn't matter how good your bowlers are if your batsmen are only getting 140 odd runs, which I don't disagree with as a statement. That is true. However, that also tries to paper over the cracks of how England's bowling has been as well, because England's bowlers have not done it. I think in 3 tests so far, we've only actually bowled the Australians out in an innings twice. No, we've not taken 20 wickets we've not taken anywhere near 20 wickets in any of the tests so far. So that is also a problem. It's not as if the bowlers are doing perfectly fine and it's just the batsmen. This is a problem throughout the team, I think.
Yeah. I think, and when we've talked about selection and we've talked about, bowlers and sometimes it's people are out of form or, people are injured and stuff, but I don't think it's any one particular area. I know we've talked about at different times throughout the year, whether it's the top order batsman or the fact that we don't have a spinner, but it is part of I think a wider problem, which is what you're kind of getting at there. And I think you're right. Maybe the leadership and, new coaches, possibly new captain, all of those things, but is there something fundamentally there that we're missing? Who knows?
And I think that's it. I think you're right. I think you tried to fix, the fact that we don't have a spinner or the fact that we don't have this or that. That's not really getting to the root cause of the problem. And I think that's what a lot of people are actually recognising. Kevin Peterson caused a bit of he always caused a bit of a stir on various things, but he was saying how they should franchise county cricket and basically get rid of the counties and franchise it and get more foreign players in to play so people are playing with the best people and all the rest of it. And, I think that's not necessarily an answer. I think it's good that people throw these things out there because I think it's good to get things like that talked about. A lot of the sort of 100 hating crowd are very much on, this is the fault of the 100 and there should be more red ball cricket being played in the middle of the summer and this is to blame. For me, that's this is a much longer problem, and that the problem with that point of view for me is that suggests that you have to pick between red ball or white ball to be successful, and that's not true. If you look at New Zealand, they were in the World Test Championship. They also won the World Cup and have been in finals and all the rest of it for years. They're successfully managing to balance two very, very successful teams. So that's not a reason for me. Like, they have the same scheduling issues that everybody else does. They're doing it off a much smaller pool of a much smaller population than we are. So, I think that is not, I'm not saying that isn't a problem and actually playing some longer form cricket in the middle of the summer wouldn't be a good thing, but it's not the reason. It's not the sole reason behind the systemic issues I think that we're seeing. I saw some comments about splitting into red ball and white ball, having even counties split red ball, white ball teams and having two separate teams. And we've talked about that from an England point of view for a while. But again, I'm not sure that fixes the problem completely. And also, does making Ben Stokes pick between the two, is that actually going to do anybody any favours?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think, you can say what you will. I feel like, and there are some elements of the game that need to change. There are some elements that I don't want to push. I wouldn't want to see the game turn into something that's too, too commercialized and too, franchised and all of that. I think I think we've seen a really genuinely an exciting time for cricket with the 100 and a lot more equality and a lot more diversity, faster pace of the game. I don't think we need to narrow options down and say we need to go down one particular route. I think Test cricket for me, it's quite, this might lead on to some of the other things we were saying. It's that elite form of cricket. It's that longer game. They're test matches and it's a real, it's the highest end of professional cricket that you can play. And I think we need to honour and respect that. I think how we go about, that, it doesn't mean that it needs to be disrupted so much in its place of kind of cricket, but I think there needs to be a lot more kind of time and care. And maybe there are some elements that we can bring forward to some of the new ideas that have been happening. And, maybe it's not such a bad idea giving kind of people a bit more, I don't know, opening it up a little bit, in some ways to help that along and to gain more interest and more traction. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think part of the problem is, I think all the things that people are pointing out are little bits and parts of the problem, but I think it's quite complicated and there's lots of issues in there. One of we've talked about, should Joe Root be sacked? And I think the thing that we've always come back to for the last 2 years or so when people have brought this up and we've been talking about it is who would you ever replace him with? And I just don't think he's a candidate at this point. And when we last talked about it, it was very much because his batting was suffering, and therefore that was to try and get that back on track. The last 12 months have proven that that's not an issue anymore. He's scored, he was up there for certainly in the top 5 for the most Test runs scored in a 12-month year ever. So, he was not far from breaking that record. So it's certainly not that's totally the issue. Is he a perfect captain? No. But do I see anybody better to take over? Also, no. So yeah, I just, I don't think there's any candidates on that front. Do you?
It's tough. In a previous episode, I think I said that it's got to be Sir Ben Stokes, and I think I've seen some stuff on the news saying that he's not, he's not interested in it and everything else. And I think maybe this is something to do with the leadership circles. But if we look at teams like, maybe India or the West Indies, where the captains seem to have a lot more prominence. Do you know what I mean? They seem to be, that it's a decision that they're kind of taking and that they're at the forefront, and maybe there's not enough going on to, maybe it is a bit too secretive and a bit too elitist about who's going to, and the coaches and leadership team are making those sort of decisions, based on what suits them and not maybe the whole team. I don't think there's really characters that really scream out at you. You look at some teams like Sri Lanka and some other kind of, some of the other teams, some of the players, they just seem like they're taking those opportunities to show that they're specialists in their field and that they're leaders and that they are, kind of prominent in there. And I don't know if we've got that same kind of swagger with a lot of our players. I think we've got a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Have we got that character though?
It's a personality. It's that ruthlessness to win, isn't it? I think, but I think one of the things is as we said, Chris Wood is pretty much on the way out. I think we were kind of pretty damning for us when he was first appointed. And say, right, man.
Was this the bowling coach?
He was an ex-bowling coach and was brought in at a time when we were trying to fix batting. Gary Kirsten is the one he's one that we wanted at that point. I think he's the one that we settled on saying that the one we thought would do really well. He's the one that's put himself forward for the job again and said that one of the things he would do would be to bring Alistair Cook in to that sort of coaching team as like the best test batsman you've had for a long time. And I was like, yeah, don't disagree with that. But it's also not totally going to fix everything. I think if you look at, England's batting has been terrible this year. I think if you look at in the 2021, the top three run scorers for England were Joe Root by a country mile. He scored something like 40% of our runs. You had Rory Burns, and then you had extras. So the other team bowling wides and no balls.
I remember that, yeah.
Scored you more runs than any other English batsman. I was like, that's absolutely insane. Like that's it. That's crazy. So I think it is more of an issue, but I think, getting people like Alistair Cook, who, he is that sort of quintessential test player, isn't he? That's really what he was. I think that's a good shout. Getting him kind of involved in that, but again, I still don't think it's. I don't think you're ever going to solve it completely just by that, on its own. I think there's a sports psychology and a mental fragility to the team that is a problem, and I think there's more of that needs to be, looked at, because England have not done well in this tournament. At all, and I think that's certainly part of the problem. But shall we go on to how we're going to solve it, and basically how we have almost prophesized this whole issue and what our sort of topic of conversation for the day is, shall we?
Yeah, I think so.
So you've kind of trailed it beautifully so far in talking about cricket is elitist. There is a problem in terms of participation in it, and there was something that I'd seen, and there was an interview or something that somebody gave, and they mentioned a statistic, and I decided I was going to go away and look it up. And this was looking at how many of the current England team went to private school. And it's a shocking amount. It's pretty much just shy of 80%. The current England team. It's 18 of 22 players went to private school, which is absolutely crazy.
It's astounding.
It is, and that really does show it is such an elitist sport. And the thing is, if your entire, if 80% of your team is coming from 6% of the population. That's the amount of people that go to private schools, 6% of the population. You're not going to have as good a team as if you were picking from the entire pool of 70 odd million that are in this country. It's participation in cricket that is the problem. And that's kind of why we started this. We came to cricket late because we never got the opportunities. If we'd all gone to private schools, we absolutely would have been playing. We could be in that England team right now.
Pretty much, yeah.
But and one thing that I said when we talked about this earlier in the week is that the most talented English cricket players are not playing in the England team right now because they're not playing cricket because they've never had the opportunity to play.
Yeah.
And if they've never been given that opportunity, then we're never going to know about them. But if you are excluding, it's not completely exclusionary, but 84% of your population are not really having that opportunity, then it's just not going to be there. And I think the other thing that we were talking about was, you look at us when we want to go and play cricket and just play in the nets and just have a bit of a.
There's no facilities anywhere.
Almost
really.
Impossible. Absolutely impossible. And yet, I live pretty much 2 minutes from a private school. They've got 15 to 20 nets that sit empty 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And that's the problem because the facilities are only for the elite and they're not there for everybody.
Yeah. And they're not even all being fully used. That's the funny thing.
Not in the slightest. I can count on one hand the times I see those nets being used. It's just. But how many? If they were open, I go down to my local park and there's tennis courts that have the net set up, and anyone with a tennis racket and a tennis ball can go and play for free at any time they want. And where's the equivalent for cricket?
Yeah.
You can't. You've got to be part of a club. But to be part of a club, you've got to be pretty invested. And you've got to kind of know what you're doing to a certain extent.
You've got to know, and this is the thing, you've got to know someone.
Yeah, you've got to know people.
We would have never been able to have gotten to our, it's not even local for us, our club. It's only because we knew someone who played cricket and just through kind of conversation. It's a bit like the Masons. You have to be invited to these things. You can't just, you're not going to rock up to, a pavilion 20 miles outside your town and be like, do you guys play cricket? Do you need a subpar batsman and a potential umpire on the square leg? Yeah. Exactly. Do you need someone on square leg? It's not. It is an incredibly difficult kind of thing to get into because there's not many people. If you compare it to football and other sports, and I think tennis is a really good example, but it's a lot more accessible. Even if I think. Similar amount of people play tennis in comparison and cricket in comparison to football, but there's facilities there. In private schools, they've obviously got, maybe it's a money thing that they've got to do these facilities, and that's why, people are coming up. But it doesn't take that much to get, we had quick cricket sets. It doesn't take that much to get a few stumps, a ball and bat, and get it done. And yeah, maybe there's an issue there. Maybe, I don't know. But I think it is about access, and maybe that is part of the problem. And that's why stuff like the 100 is so important, I feel, in opening it up. And people are very like, not in spirit. Well, I'm sorry, but if it is looking at getting younger people more interested, getting more potential cricketers into the game, then, that can, like we said, I think last year, then that can only be a good thing.
Massively. And you're right, you're spot on. The key to fixing English cricket, and I think the point we're kind of driving at here, is getting more people playing.
Yeah.
Because if far more people were playing, you're picking up more people who are not like us and actually have some talent, and they're going to go on and they're going to drive forward into that next level and next level and next level. You're going to have a much better quality of county cricket being played because you've got far more people playing, and it raises the standard every time.
Yeah,
and that's only going to be make it more competitive and have more people playing, and that's only going to be good for the game. And yeah, in that sense, whatever you can do to get people playing is, absolutely key. And things like the 100, if that's going to drive participation. The fear for me is that you've got a lot of these like kids clubs and stuff that are trying to like attract it, but are they being supported enough? Is there enough there being done? And is there a pathway there, a proper pathway for, regular, 8-year-old child to take that through to the next level and take it on and on and on? And I don't think there is. And I know that's something we talked about in terms of women's cricket before, but I certainly think there's an issue there on the men's side as well. And I don't think there's an answer there yet. And I think, things like the 100 and getting kids in and playing, I think is absolutely crucial to this. But I think the facilities are not there. And if they are there, they're not open enough and they're not known about enough. Because we, and particularly with COVID, that's not helped, because we tried to find nets in the summer last year where we could go and play, and even we'd be happy to pay for nets, and nowhere was accepting it, because the clubs are saying, well, if you're not part of our club, then you can't come.
Yep, that's it.
Because of COVID reasons, it's difficult, and so that's it. So we literally couldn't find anywhere, even if we were willing to pay, we couldn't find anywhere to do it. So, X, Y, and Z kid on the street is going to find it pretty much impossible.
And why would you, as a kid on the street, if it's not there, then if one of you's got you just need one of you to have a football from JD Sport or whatever, and then that's what you're going to do. You are going to be playing footy. It's easy, it's accessible, and there's nothing,
But you're right, and that's why England, like the England football team, is actually really competitive on the world stage. I know they're not, the best, but if you looked at, like last year, there was a video of Tottenham Hotspur players, like warming up playing cricket as like a social thing. If you saw the video of Harry Kane bowling, I was like, oh, he's got some serious skills. But, well, he may be, he could have been a phenomenal bowler, but, he's not, he wasn't from a wealthy area. He was from, a state school in London. What did he take up? He took up football. He could have been the next Jimmy Anderson. He could have been a phenomenal bowler. He's got height. He's got, he's got pace. He could be a phenomenal bowler, but he's not involved at all because it's not accessible. And football is more accessible. And there's an element of practicality in terms of cricket's just more expensive, the equipment and stuff. However, it's not prohibitively expensive. You can get a cheap pair of pads and a cheap bat and a cheap helmet and a couple of balls for not that much money.
This is the thing, and
it wouldn't take a huge amount of investment from cricketing authorities, given that the ECB have just given them themselves £2 million bonuses. It doesn't take that much money to actually invest in some community style nets and equipment. That could be,
But even still, I think we could say, this is where you're always going to get a bit of contention. It's about, get some money, get some cheap gear out there and do this, that and the other. And you're right. But if we look at India, for example, where that's their sport of choice, and they're going out there with crates,
sure.
Just use crates and some wide sticks, and you look at them as if that's part of their kind of culture, and it's available to everybody, no matter what class it is.
Yeah, true. Like the participation
top
in India
ranked,
is massive, and they don't have the equipment. So actually, you're right. It's not even about equipment because they have it there.
It's about awareness. It's about people being. It's about, I think, people within cricket of the old school that are, a bit kind of, the old eggs and bacon Mason kind of vibes that English cricket has. I think we need to soften it up a bit and wisen it if we're serious about, it being a thing. India are ranked top in the world for Test cricket for last year. and you just got to see that it's embedded. It isn't a thing. Now, is it a money sort of issue involved and all of that kind of stuff? Do people want to keep it that way? Well, then it can't be expected to be.
Mm. And you're right. It links back to the racism episode we did.
Yeah,
a couple of episodes ago.
Absolutely.
And it is that elite cricket. You look at MCC at Lords. To become a member of the MCC, you have to be nominated by somebody who knows somebody, and then you have to sit on the waiting list for 10 years. It's the very definition of being exclusive and exclusionary. And actually, the people at the top of cricket and involved, and to a big degree in county cricket, they quite like the fact that it's quite exclusive and all the rest of it.
Of course.
And you know, because it's traditional, but the traditions aren't working. The traditions don't work. And I don't think you should throw everything out, and I'm not saying that you just get rid of it all and all tradition, you just need to scrap it all, and I'm not saying, you know, Kevin Peterson's right and gonna, you know, scrap everything and franchise and do this and do that and make it all glitzy and glamorous. There's compromises to be made, but the people involved in cricketing authorities and at county and England level need to be willing to change, to accept change, and to accept not being exclusive anymore.
There's this thing, like, there's a difference between tradition and the spirit of the game and people who just like to feel like they're part of an exclusive club.
Yeah.
And people like to feel like that, especially, well, I'm not going to go into it too much just to cause any kind of rifts, but there are people who, from certain backgrounds and certain who enjoy that kind of, you know, this secret kind of club where they can, you know, have a little gaggle, have a little gossip, exclude the people that they want, like-minded people who like to be in those kind of positions, and that's not what professional sport is about. It's about recognizing talent, and that means casting a wide net, because it helps drive healthier competition, more diverse skills, talents. You know, maybe that is something that needs to be kind of just looked at cricket on the whole. And I think we're making steps. You know, I think there's been some good stuff, you know, over the past year, but maybe that is something that for our test team and England in general, needs to be really kind of thought about. And
I think you're spot on, and I think what you're saying is, like, you're right. If you think about it, the cricket, if you look down to even like the terminology of cricket, it's confusing and complicated, and there's almost a slight pride in the fact that it makes like no real sense. And like, we had our like seemingly stumped and stuff things early on in this, where we were trying to explain bits of terminology and stuff, because it is complicated. For somebody coming in from the outside, you're like, what on earth are you talking about? This makes no sense whatsoever. It's commented and it's joked about on, you know, TV series and on this and that, and there's almost a slight pride in it.
Yeah. There is a pride. You're so right. I remember going to a pub before I played cricket, and the test matches, all the Ashes would be on, and there'd be that one guy that would know the rules. And the worst thing you've got to think about for football is the offside rule, which is pretty standard kind of thing. That's the most complicated thing. And I remember the kind of smugness of his face. It's like, that he's talking about a particular position, or we've got this many runs and that's what that means. You know, there is it's mind-boggling, and it's confusing, and it's intimidating, and there could be a way to, soften that up a bit and get people interested in it.
Yeah, you're right, because it's one thing that really puts people off from learning about, cricket, it's really complicated. Really complicated. And you know, that's, you know, I just think, I just think it is, you've got to get over that slight smugness, pride thing where, you know, well, yes, I understand this, but you know, I'll explain it to you. You know, there's no reason. It's, you know, Test cricket is actually pretty simple. It's two sides bat twice. Who got most runs wins. You know, at its essence, yes, you get more in depth
Mm-hmm.
with everything, and there's always more complexity in things. But that's it at its essence, is two sides, bat twice, and whoever gets more runs wins.
Yeah.
That is it at the end of the day. And it's not exclusive. And yes, there's a lot of depth. If you want to go into it and you want to get into the minute detail of cricket, then yeah, there's a lot there for you. And I love it, and you love it, and there's a lot of depth for it. We wouldn't have been able to keep 74 episodes of a podcast going on it if it wasn't interesting and complicated and all the rest of it. But there's a point where you've got to try and simplify it for kids and for new people to the game to make it that bit more accessible. It's what the 100 tried to do. 100 balls, whoever gets more runs wins. That's what it was trying. That's what it was aimed at. And yeah, there was other bits and pieces that might have been done differently for it. But that's what we've got to strive for. And I think there's a real reluctance in the cricket community to do that. And I think there's almost a willful ignorance of it at some points, because they're all talking about, oh, well, should we play this game at this time of year or these games at that time of year? That's not going to solve it. That's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. That's ignoring the giant iceberg that's ahead of you, is that not enough people are playing cricket. And if you actually solve that one, you know what? The rest of it is all minor. The rest of it of, getting this batting coach as opposed to this bowling coach, that'll work itself out. Getting more people involved is where the real problem is. And that's the bit that you need to solve. And that's the reason we started this podcast, was to try and reach out to those people who want to learn more about cricket, but don't know it and don't want to feel stupid. We're there feeling stupid for you. It's what we're doing. So, in essence, I think we are the solution to England's cricketing problems.
There you go.
In conclusion, I don't think anyone can argue with that.
I don't think so.
If you'd like to argue with us about that, then feel free to try. But I mean, that seems like flawless logic to me. To me, I'm going to get Joe Denley on the phone now.
No, Joe Denley's actually one of the guys on the team that went to public school, along with Mark Wood, Chris Wokes, and Ben Stokes.
I didn't know that. So yeah. I didn't look, because Joe Denley wasn't on my list of current England players. So, sorry, Joe. All this forgiven. I will bring you back. You are now one of my favourite England players. Come on back. And that's... Oh, man, what a turnaround. That's really a roller coaster ride over 74 episodes, isn't it?
I was trying to find... I've literally, as I've been listening as well, I've been trying to find some of our kind of longer standing cricketing captains to see if any of them have come from kind of state schools.
Go back to England captains, yeah.
Yeah. They're all coming from prep schools and private schools and stuff. It's just...
I can't imagine any of them would be. I mean, you look back at the most recent ones, Root, Cook, people like Mike Atherton, yeah, they all absolutely would have been. So, yeah, and that's it. And that's...
There you go.
It's all part of the issue. It really is. So yeah, it's an interesting one, I think. But I think that's the problem that isn't being talked about enough, and that's what we want to do. So if you want to fix English cricket, all of you listeners out there, and this probably isn't going to apply to the new set of Australian listeners we seem to have acquired in the last couple of weeks, but tell some of your English friends about it. Pass this podcast around, and that will solve English cricket. And it will make the Ashes more competitive, which I'm sure the Australians want. They don't want to just, walk over us all the time. I mean, they want to walk over us and beat us 5-0, but they want to do it against a competitive team. This is just not fun for them, surely. They can't be happy. They want to gloat over, beating a really talented team, not beating a team that, in all honesty, was never going to... I mean, you're the most optimistic England fan I know, and you could only muster up predicting a draw in this series.
Yeah, which is yeah.
Like we all saw this coming, and my only hope out of this series is that it's been so bad that it actually does become the catalyst for some sort of change. I'm being wildly optimistic there, but that I hope that people are looking at this in a proper way of how you actually can fix English cricket.
And I'd like to hear from any Australian listeners as well, whether or not they feel it's the same in Australia. I feel like it's more out there, isn't it, in Australia? I think.
Yeah, because cricket is pretty much the national sport in Australia. I know they've got Aussie rules football, which is massively popular as well. But basically, those are the two things that dominate the sporting calendar in Australia. I mean, Australia are working off less than half the population of England. But everyone in Australia, like through school, will be playing cricket. So their participation levels are going to be through the roof compared to ours. And, the same with India. And those are the two, really massively popular, successful teams. Because it's right up there. So I think that should be telling you everything you need to know. Is that the two countries with, really super high participation levels are the two that are the most successful. It's a simple equation. So yeah. But I tell you what, if anybody else out there has ideas on what they think should be happening to fix Test cricket and fix cricket in general in England, then do let us know. We are active on Twitter at Wrong End Podcast. We are on Instagram at Wrong End Podcast, or you can email us at wrongendofthestick@hotmail.com. Yeah, please do, and pass this podcast along to any non-cricketing people that want to get involved and see if they can pick up a bat and potentially be the next Joe Root, because that's what we need. We need a team of Roots, really, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If we had 4 Joe Roots, we'd be fine.
Smashing it.
Yeah, and that's
couple more Stokes, couple of Wokes.
It's not to say that all people coming through private school are like Joe Root came through private school, but he's a phenomenal player, and yeah, he is probably the best English batsman we've had for a long, long time. So it's fine having that. It's just when that's the only pot of people that you're picking from is that 6%. That's a real problem. When you just got that handful that you talked about that came from state schools.
State schools, yeah.
That's the problem. And yeah, just getting cricket out there, getting on more about it. That's the solution to all of these problems. You any more? Or have we ranted? I feel like that's been quite a ranty episode.
It has, but I think we've been talking about it for a little while about, accessibility of cricket, and I think it's in line with our own journey, and I think all very relevant. So yeah. Yeah. That's it from my side of the fence on it.
Yeah. And that's it from me. So thank you for listening, everyone. If you do want to get involved in the discussion on it, please do come and find us on Twitter in particular. Give us a nice 5-star review. Let your friends know about this episode in particular, because I feel like this is an impassioned plea on this one. So
yeah.
And we will be back in a couple of weeks' time to see how the rest of the test actually gone, and see what happens from there, and see if there's any signs of who the new coach might be, whether it is Gary Kirsten or somebody else. So we'll find out and have plenty to talk about in the future, I'm sure. So,
good stuff.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you very soon.
Take care. Bye.